Hey, why don't we go ahead and get started? So hello, everyone. Welcome to Ask the Grant Writing Expert. I'm Dr. Meg Bouvier. You know me as the creator of your library of NIH grantsmanship courses. I have almost 40 years of experience at NIH as an applicant and intramural researcher, a staff writer, and now as a full-time NIH grant mentor. I've helped clients land over $500 million in federal funding, and I'm here to answer your NIH grant writing questions. So grab a cup of coffee or tea and let's get started. So if you're attending live, we've got a pretty healthy group of people here. Just a reminder that you're in listen only mode, so you can just go ahead and start typing your questions in. We don't have a guest or a mini tutorial today. This is strictly a Q&A as we gear up for the cycle 2 deadlines in June and July. So go ahead and start typing your questions in the Q&A box. If you have something to share, feel free to put that in the chat. And if you're watching this as a recording, and more people are doing that, both on our open YouTube channel and on our members on their course dashboard, just a reminder that things change really quickly at NIH, especially this year. And it's May 14th, 2025, and everything I'm saying is true to the best of my knowledge as of today, but be sure to go and check things out because things change quickly. What you should be viewing in the library now, well, if you're targeting a June deadline, I hope you're done watching courses. I would hope that you're kind of putting the finishing touches on your application package. And if you're watching anything, I would say it might be a checklist to avoid top mistakes, just kind of doing a systems check before you upload. But hopefully you're kind of putting the final touches on your application package at this point. I'm a big believer in starting very early, giving yourself 4 to 6 months, particularly if it's your first R series application to write it. So hopefully that's where you are at this point. Any NIH updates? Oh my goodness, there was a big one about foreign subawards that was so Baroque in the way it was written. It was really complicated to parse through it. And a team member of mine was kind enough to take a crack at it and do a little write up on that, which should be appearing in the upcoming newsletter. The pretty dramatic changes to foreign subawards that are coming up. So take a look at that. I don't think we're doing a blog post on it. I think it's just something coming in the monthly newsletter, which should be coming out pretty soon. So stay tuned for that. I just approved that right up today. So the first question is, have you heard about Rampart? And I would say no, I have not. So if you'd like to share something about that with us, that would be great. Do you have information on centralized review study sections? For example, where can we find the rosters? Okay, so the last that I heard, and if anybody has seen anything more recent pertaining to this, let me know. But the last that I heard was, and I can't remember if I spoke about it here, but it really kind of galls me. There was a census done of reviews that occur. Let me back up. For those who don't know about NIH review, just so that I can explain. All reviews back in the olden days, which I actually can remember some of this, all reviews used to occur within the institutes. They would just handle all their own reviews. And then to make things less biased, more impartial. The review function for most applications was split out of NIH, and the Center for Scientific Review was created, which technically is not part of NIH. It's technically not part of it. And the R series applications are reviewed there. Pretty almost all of them, I think, are reviewed there. And there's still some things that get reviewed in-house at the institutes. Those would be things like topic-specific RFAs. Sometimes K awards are reviewed there, although Ks can vary from institute to institute and year to year. Center grants are usually reviewed in-house. T32s are usually reviewed in-house. So in their wisdom, the current administration did a census of the reviews that occur. Sorry, my plug just came out. I'm off site today. I'm in Los Angeles because we're helping our daughter with our new grandson, which has been such a delight. But anyway, so the census showed that the reviews that occur within the institutes are more expensive. And so in all their wisdom, the current administration said, ergo, we should just move everything to the Center for Scientific Review. But they didn't account for the fact that the types of applications that are reviewed at the institutes tend to be large, complex applications like center grants, multi-project use, that kind of thing. So there is this move now to centralize everything within CSR, which I personally think would be a bad idea, because things like center grants and multi-project use and topic-specific R-series applications require a lot of input from program staff from conception to completion. And it is appropriate for them to be reviewed in-house by a review group that the program staff set up, and they should exert more control over it. Last I heard, that is going forward, but who knows, because there's so much flip-flopping right now about we're doing this, no, we're not doing that. So if anybody's heard anything more recent than I have about that centralized review situation, let me know. One would imagine that whatever study sections are going to be set up or are currently set up at CSR would be available at the CSR. You can see them, see the rosters at the CSR website if they're set up as standing study sections. So, of course, any kind of an ad hoc panel, whether it's at CSR or elsewhere, you're not going to be able to see the roster ahead of time. So if your NOFO asks for a letter of intent, that's usually a sign that it's going to go to some sort of an ad hoc panel, usually a special emphasis panel. Usually you can't see the roster ahead of time. And the letter of intent is used by program staff or CSR, I guess, to set it up. I hope that answers the question. Is it acceptable to apply for an NIH grant and also submit the same one to a foundation and or a corporation? It's not only acceptable, but I would say nowadays it's probably advisable. That's a strategy that kind of shotgunning strategy is something that I used to advise people who were, they're coming up on their tenure decision, for example, and they need to demonstrate that they can land some money. But right now, I think it's probably just a good idea in general. So the rule is that you can't have the same science and review at two places at NIH at the same time, but you can certainly have the same science and review at different federal agencies. So, for example, you could have the same project and review at NIH, NSF, DOD, whatever, and private foundations. Now, having said that, NIH usually takes the longest to get a decision back. So what you may want to do is kind of hedge your bet and maybe have one aim overlap and maybe have some differences in the project so that on the outside chance that you wind up with multiple awards, or like if you get your NIH award and you've already accepted a private foundation award, it gives you room to maneuver in terms of, this aim was already funded by a foundation a few months back. So we're going to request funding for these remaining two aims, for example. Usually you would work with your program officer on how to do that. But yes, it is allowed. I'm planning for an RO3 resubmission in June. If it's a resubmission, it's probably July, unless it's some kind of NOFO, like a topic-specific NOFO. But most of the resubmission deadlines are in July. Just double check that. I contacted the program officer listed on my summary statement to schedule a meeting to discuss any comments that may not have made in the summary statement. I have not heard from them. I plan to email them once again. Should I be looking for other people at NCI to contact? If so, how would you suggest I go about it? So, so this is going to be a comment specific to NCI and specific to this time period. So I would say that you may be having trouble getting a hold of the program officer because a lot of people are leaving, a lot of program officers are leaving NIH, either by choice or otherwise. So that person may not be here. I'm assuming if this is a resubmission, you got their summary statement before the current administration took office, or the review occurred before the current administration took office, and that PO may have left or been pushed out. So I would contact somebody else. Of course, that other person may not have been in the room during the discussion, but they could still give you feedback on the summary statement. And that's the part that's specific to this time period. The program officer may be gone. It's more likely now than in a typical time that they may be gone. The part that's specific to NCI is that at NCI, typically what I suggest people do they have such a gigantic portfolio and so very many program officers that it probably would not be that hard to look within the same division to see if you can find somebody whose portfolio has some overlap at NCI with this person, and email them and see if you can, get somebody to have a conversation with you. I wouldn't worry too much about tracking down the exact right second program officers. If program officer A isn't responding, pick a likely program officer B and just say, hey, listen, I've been trying to contact this other person. I'm trying to get some information, some feedback on my summary statements for my R03. This person is not responding. Do you know if they're still there, or is there someone else with whom I can speak? The deadline's coming up. And indicate the time sensitivity in the subject line. So put like Q, RE, upcoming deadline. Early June deadline, or I think it's like the 16th, right? Or July 16th, it would be probably. So, but still, I would indicate time sensitivity in the subject line so that they triage yours to the top of the list because they get so many questions. So, hopefully that's helpful for those who have a similar problem at an institute that's smaller than NCI. You could pick. In this instance, you're going to pick somebody who's within the same division, most likely, for your plan B for the program officer. At a smaller institute, you're probably just going to pick another R01 program officer, or maybe there's only one, in which case you would pick just a different program officer and see if you can get an answer. And again, don't worry about getting the exact right person, because if you haven't landed on the right person, they'll forward it to the right person. So don't worry too much about that. Okay, can you talk about the new review criteria? It's now 3 main criteria as opposed to 5 previously. With the new review criteria, is it true that how beautiful and polished your grant it's going to matter more than substance or candidate's reputation or their environment or for K awards? Okay, so there's a multiple parts to this question. So I've covered this pretty extensively in October. So I would encourage you to go on your course dashboard and look at the AGE video. I think the first one was October 2nd. We were actually just talking about it this morning at one of our team meetings because it's getting heavy traffic, which means that you're not the only one with this question. And so, yes, you are correct that it is now 3 main criteria. So investigator and environment are no longer scored criteria. They're considered. They're considered during the review, but they're not given a numeric score. So importance of the research is factor 1, which kind of mushes together significance and innovation, and factor 2 is essentially the approach. So I go through those pretty extensively there, but I would say the part that pertains to the approach, the main thing is that it's following the trend of increasing emphasis on rigor. Just a gigantic amount of the new approach scoring criteria deal with rigor. And I talk in that video about exactly how I might alter the write-up to accommodate that. The nice thing about the factor 1 part is the importance of the research, which is significance and innovation, is that it's a single score instead of splitting those into 2, right? So the nice thing about it is that it kind of de-emphasizes innovation if necessary. So I think it begins, the part about innovation begins with something like, is it important for this project to be using the most innovative cutting edge techniques to accomplish the goal? Because it's been a problem for a long time where people have, they ask a scientific question and by far the most appropriate way to answer it is with a tried and true technique. And then you get dinged on innovation. That's kind of been a problem. So by putting them together and then phrasing the first innovation related scoring criteria pertaining to that, it kind of gives that person a little wiggle room if they're not using the most sexy cutting edge techniques because they're not appropriate for answering that question. So So that kind of gives you just a quick overview. I go into way more detail, side-by-side comparisons and all of that. So go to your learning management system, your course dashboard, and go to AGE and then just scroll down to the October videos, and they're there. But the other thing you asked, is it true that how beautiful and polished your grant is going to matter more than substance or candidate's reputation or their environment? Nothing matters more than the substance of the grant. It is true that great science is not enough at NIH. You have to have some grantsmanship chops, and you've got to be able to format it to make it skimmable. Nothing is more important than substance. It does kind of de-emphasize the candidate's reputation in their environment, which CSR has been trying to do for years in response to people's complaints or concerns, I guess is the better word, that people with, big reputations get kind of waved through without having to explain their grants too much. And it doesn't leave room for junior faculty. So there is a de-emphasis on candidates' reputation and environment, but the beauty of the grant is never going to trump the content. I don't think. I would hate to see that day. So yeah, I mean, probably the most important thing is preliminary data and publications. Those are probably the two most important things. And the quality of the project that you're proposing, whether it's scoped appropriately and hypothesis driven and all of that. So the beauty of it is never going to trump those things. But at NIH, you do have to have some grantsmanship chops, and it has to be really easy to skim. So, and if you want to know more about that, I would encourage you to go to the boot camp that's coming up in June, because if any of you have ever taken my courses or done my boot camps, I talk ad nauseum about how to make an application skimmable. Okay, next question is NIMHD agency going away. One would think that is probably going to happen. It has not happened yet, but in the current administration, and that wasn't there, I think it was a leaked document, another one of these leaked documents about a potential restructure for NIH. And in that potential restructure, it doesn't exist. And the other institutes are grouped in ways that aren't terribly scientifically logical. But again, it's a leaked document. It's not a done deal. It's hard to say. And will it continue to be gone after this administration? That's hard to say too. And I assume you're asking because you're an NIMHD applicant. So it remains to be seen. I personally have not seen anything that definitively says that it's going away, an official document out of NIH. But one would imagine that is where we're going to be maybe by next year. I don't know. I think it has to be approved by Congress, though, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong about that. Can an international student apply for NIH grants? Well, that depends on which one, right? So if you're, depending on the type of visa you have, if you're a foreign student, I think in the K series, I think the only one available for foreign students is a K99R00, if I remember correctly. So for your specific situation, I would speak with a program officer or somebody at your institute. I will say that if I had to guess, this is going to be a moving target, though, because all of this nonsense about the foreign subawards that came out, I don't know if other people, and I'm going to just say this because I can say it. I run my own company. I'm not affiliated with any other organization. I'm just going to tell you that I read that notice and I thought, this isn't really about the kind of reporting that, the party line is that they're not going to allow foreign sub awards or, because the reporting is not adequate on them, they said. I don't buy it. I think they want to keep the money in this country. And so I can't help but wonder if, because there's always been talk in Congress about keeping NIH funding in the United States. And one could imagine in the current institution that the cadence of that kind of talk is going up, one would imagine. And I can't help but wonder if somewhere along the line, foreign students might be in the crosshairs too. But if that happens, it'll be down the road. And for now, the current rules are that it depends on the NOFO. So I would just check with your program officer of the target NOFO, and talk to your pre-award support office. Okay, so this is the person who was talking about that software. Supposedly, this is software that can help with terms that may be taboo. Ay, ay, ay. All right, so I don't. I have a problem with it. I do. I'm not aware of this software, but I just have a problem with the supposed taboo list anyway, because this list was put out by the New York Times, I want to say like on March 7th, Friday, March 7th, I think it came out. And it's not an NIH issued list of problem terms. It is a list that multiple reporters, compiled from many, many sources, many of which were not official, across agencies. So that was not just NIH, but across other agencies as well. So that list is readily available, on the New York Times website. I'm sure if you just, I'll just pull it up for you and put it in the chat while we're chatting, because I think I have it bookmarked because I get so many questions about it. Let's see if I can do this with one monitor. I'm so not used to doing this. Yeah, so I have problems with it. I have problems with the whole concept of this taboo list. I mean, I think that you should use this. Here it is. I have it bookmarked as a list of forbidden terms. I'm going to put that link in the chat for you. You don't really need software to do this, right? Let's see. To everyone. Okay. You don't need software for this. You can look at it and see. Bear with me. Sorry, I'm used to having a lot of monitors and I'm struggling to get this to work on a tiny little laptop. Okay. All right. So that the New York Times link is now in the chat. So yeah, and we don't even know, we don't really have data points yet, right, in terms of what NIH is going to consider acceptable or not acceptable. And people are coming up with all kinds of workarounds that may or may not work. And some of the terms on the list are nonsensical. So like, I think women is one of the terms on the list. So like, well, okay, like what are, what are you supposed to do with that if you stratify by male and female, or if you're studying pregnancy, or, I mean, some of it's a little silly, so anyway, we'll have to wait and see. I don't know that you need software to do that, but if anybody is interested in that, the person who talked about that, if you want to put the link for it in the chat, I'm sure some people would want to check that out. Okay, and we have expanded the time on this just because I still have 11 questions, and it's 25 after. So just so people know, we've expanded the time. I think we're now doing 45 minutes. So because we're just routinely getting more people and more questions, and I'm happy to answer questions. So if people need to leave at 30 minutes past the hour, totally understand. If you want to stay on, that's great too. How do you respond to reviewers in your introduction page about something that you had already included in your first submission? Do you write it as, "We have now clarified," even though the information was already there? Yeah, that can be a little maddening. I mean, sometimes, so again, this is an issue where reviewers skim. They skim. That's what they do. And they're sitting there with a scoring sheet in front of them. And, hopefully your assigned reviewers read it ahead of time, but they probably also read 10 or 12 other ones. And they're skimming at the study section meeting to jog their memory about the details of yours. So often when this happens, I feel that it might be a formatting fix, that, it was in there the first time, but somehow they missed it and were looking for it and couldn't find it. So somehow it needs to be formatted to call attention to it. And the way that I typically handle that in the introduction is to just state the fact, so I would not say we've now clarified it because, it was there all along, but I would just say this is covered in detail in section C.1b or whatever. You don't have to say it was there. How did you miss it? Or like we've now clarified it, which isn't true. Just state where it is. We've covered this in detail in section C.1D or whatever it is. So yeah, I just keep things simple and factual. And if you're using an outline format, you can write a very tight introduction page because you can refer to a specific place in the outline in the introduction page. Okay, congratulations on your new grandson. Thank you very much. We are enjoying him thoroughly. He's 3 weeks old. Can you talk about criteria for early stage investigator status extension and what documents we need for such an extension? Sure. First, let's talk about what constitutes an extension. Well, first, let's talk about what it is. ESI status is 10 years or less from your terminal degree or your last clinical, fellowship or whatever it is. And you have not been an PI on an R01 or equivalent, and it confers a funding advantage in most cases on R01 level applications. It's not at all relevant to K, small format R, other types of applications. The whole thing only pertains to R01s. And not all institutes give an ESI funding advantage, or some of them don't give a juicy one, but most do. And so I always encourage people to get in as many R01 applications on their ESI status as possible. So in terms of extensions, it used to be that most extensions were due to childbirth. If a woman births a child, all you have to do is ask, and it's an automatic 1-year extension for any child you have birthed. But having said that, many parents who have not birthed a child have gotten parental extensions as well, especially if they have taken FMLA at their organization. Now, the most common reason for an extension is COVID-related research interruptions. We're going to be seeing extensions on that for a while, I never get involved in the application process itself, but I can tell you what my clients report to me. It's a simple online application, apparently. You yourself do it. You don't typically ask your pre-award support office to do it. And my clients tell me that they can get the application in same day. That it's a very straightforward thing. I think the two things to keep in mind are that you have to provide enough information in your request that NIH knows how much time to add back to your clock. Sometimes it's very straightforward. I had a baby, I'm asking for a year. Or my lab was closed for 3 months, I'm asking for 3 months. It gets a little trickier if you couldn't get a reagent during the pandemic and that slowed things down. Or, like your lab was open, but you couldn't recruit because people were like human subjects were not coming into your medical center. So you have to find a way to justify a certain quantity of time that you're asking to be added back to the clock. So that's one piece of it, to think about that. The other piece is you have to typically get a letter from somebody in your organization verifying that what you're saying is true. So if you say my lab was closed for 3 months and I'm asking for 3 months back or whatever it is, whoever was your supervisor at the time that your lab was closed, and that might be at a different organization, maybe you've moved since then, you want to get a letter from the person who was your supervisor at that time. And in my opinion, the best way to do this is to write the damn letter yourself and just send it as a Word document, send it to the person and say, can you print this on letterhead and sign it and send it back to me? And typically they will have their admin person do that same day. So those are the two pieces to really think about. It's like, what is the quantity of time that you can justify asking them to give you? And that you'd have to write out what the justification is, and who can you ask to verify it? And usually you just get a signed letter. It's a simple thing. Yes, their lab was closed for 3 months, signed, department head, on the letterhead. So that's usually, from what I understand, what you need. Let's see. Should we still use ART to direct our applications, since many applications may now go through CSR? So ART is for CSR. So let's talk a moment about what that means. So CSR is the Center for Scientific Review. And I said earlier in this session, it is the external body, not part of NIH, where most of the R series applications are reviewed and some other applications. Sometimes Ks are reviewed there and some other things as well. But most NIH applications are reviewed there. ART is a tool that CSR developed a couple of years ago. It used to be, and this wasn't that long ago, so some of you may remember this, the laborious hunt for, sifting through the hundreds of study sections and starting out with an integrated review group and, the 15 or 20 study sections that were under it and laboriously going through that. They developed this lovely search tool called the Assisted Referral Tool, so CSR ART. And that tool helps you find a standing study section at CSR. That's what it's always been. But I think what you may be asking me is, given that they may be consolidating things in CSR as ART, this is still the correct tool to use. I think that's what you're actually asking me, because that's the question, right? And I would say yes. I would say that anything that is under the CSR umbrella is probably going to be searchable with the ART tool. That's what it's designed to do. And the question of, whether or not something that typically would be an in-house review, like, a center grant, a T32, a U54, a topic-specific NOFO that was previously reviewed as by a SEP in-house at the Institute, I would ask the program officer about that if it's still going to be reviewed that way. So, okay, a Katz question. For the Katz for early career scholars grants, do we need to have an R03 funded before submitting an R01? No, I would say no. So, you don't need an R03 for any R01. Let's just start there. So I do think that the odds are stacked against you if you apply for any R01 without demonstrating some ability to land external funding. So like on a parent R01, you don't necessarily need an R03 or an R21, but maybe show that you've done like a campus grant or a private foundation grant and that you turned that money into publications. But Katz is a little bit different because on the Katz, you're not allowed to have preliminary data. So I would say it's even less important I've had clients who have applied for a Katz without having landed anything but like a campus grant, like a $50,000 campus grant. And, the whole idea for the Katz is that it's a person who is an ESI who is changing direction. And they're heading off in a completely new direction, and they're not showing any preliminary data. And in my experience, what people typically do in that scenario is that they actually have some data and they just don't report it. But they don't have enough to be competitive on a parent R01. And then what they do is they continue to gather preliminary data while they wait for the Katz decision to come in. And then if it's not funded, and they're pretty competitive, so it's often not funded, in the meantime, you've gathered data and vetted the project idea at some study section. So you're getting some feedback on it. And then you're ready to pivot into a parent R01. So, so you definitely don't need to have a funded R03 before submitting a Katz. You don't even need a funded R03 before submitting a regular R01. So for whatever that's worth. Suggestions on what to do when the PA we were working on is expired. For example, the following is expired. So, that's a tricky thing. So let me open this and just see what kind of a project this is. That's an F32. I would contact the program officer and see what I thought it was going to be a topic specific R01, but it's an F32. I would contact the program officer and ask what they suggest you do, because I'm not really sure for that career stage. I guess you could look at the K99. But yeah, I think I would ask the program officer what to do with that. Let's see, did those two, does NIH have a DP2 award this year? I haven't seen any updates on their website. Is a postdoc eligible to apply? So there are 4 high risk, high reward. I am actually going to pull it up and see if I can, and again, just bear with me because I have one tiny little monitor, and I'm not used to doing it this way. NIH high risk, high reward. Let's see where they are with there are 4 high risk, high reward mechanisms. The DP2 is one of them. They are geared toward different career stages. So, and let's see, you asked about a postdoc. I believe there is one. Let's see. So the Director's Award is open to all career stages. Director's Innovation Award is ESI. Here we go. The Early Independence Award. I knew there was one for exceptional junior scientists bypassing postdoctoral training, but you're already in a postdoc. So you're probably going to look at the New Innovation Award. It looks like they have the ones from FY24 up and have not yet released. Let's see if this expires. Yeah, it expires in August. Oh, yeah, it expired. So it's hard to say if they're going to. I have not heard anything about these not being reissued. Given how slow things are right now with reissues, it may just take time for them to come out. And again, you could email the program officer and say, hey, like it's one submission date a year. Like, is this going to be reissued? It's May. Like, are you going to reissue it or what? Because it should be coming out in the next couple of weeks, but everything is so slow getting approved right now. So I think I would email the program officer and ask them about that. Okay, let's see. My question is about tariffs. I'm wondering how NIH wants those who are applying to shared equipment grants to include the tariff charge. Some vendors include this as a line item in the quote, while others choose to bill separately, which is risky because the value can change. If the tariff is included in the quote, then the price point of your requested instrument will be higher and may limit what you are able to purchase. Will NIH consider this a cost that your institution covers through institutional support? Wow, that's a really good question, and I don't know the answer to it. I don't work on budgets, so that has not been on my radar, but now it is. So that's a great question. And again, this is a question for the program officer, and I'm going to tell you, I wonder if even they know the answer to that. I would not suggest that it might be covered by the indirects at your institution. I would leave that out of the discussion. I would just say, do you want us to build it into the quote directly, or is it something we could put into a different line item down, like as a rebudget number down the line? Like, I would not even suggest that it could be part of the indirects because that's such a sticky wicket at the moment. So, wow, that's a really, really good question. So if anybody has information on that, please feel free to share it in the chat. Or if you, Paige, learn anything more about that, please come back and tell us, because that's such a great question. Yeah, and the tariffs, I mean, they literally, wasn't there just a Times headline saying tariffs, flip-flopping tariffs? I think that was yesterday's headline at the New York Times. What types of grant applications are available for T32 postdocs? U.S. citizens and permanent residents are eligible for T32. So again, T32s are not all the same, right? Like the eligibility rules can differ. And I think the eligibility around whether or not you can have foreign people on a T32, I think that varies by the NOFO, if I remember correctly, but I haven't worked on one in a while, so don't quote me on that. But you're really asking if you're already a T32 postdoc who is a U.S. citizen, what are you eligible to apply for? I think that's what you're asking. And I would say it's probably pretty much anything else that the goal of the T32 is to launch you into writing a competitive R series application or case submission. So There is a PI on the T32, and this is a question for that person because there's usually something written into the application that says what their trainees are going to target and when they're going to write it and what the launch is going to look like. So I would ask the PI on your T32 what the intent of the T32 is in terms of what are the trainees expected to do, and when, like in what timeline. So I would ask about that. I think I answered your question, but if not, please clarify for me. Should you be on the faculty tenure track job market without any K or R grants? How can you negotiate protected time or make your case for promise as a researcher? Oof, that is a tough one. I mean, it really depends on, like tenure track going where. Like, there are different types of scenarios, a lot of it will depend on your publications. Like you could be looking at, a tertiary care center, like an academic medical center, a big R1 university, in which case it may be hard to land a tenure track position without at least a K. Or you might be looking, like I normally hail from New England, which is like the land of small liberal arts colleges, and we're knee deep in people who don't have, significant grant funding who are working at liberal arts schools with primarily a teaching focus. So it really depends on what you want to do and what you're, like there are so many parameters that would go into the answer to that I would encourage you probably to talk that over with a mentor. I would hope that you have a mentor who is helping you with this process. But yeah, I think if you're looking at like an R1 university or like a pretty serious academic medical center, you're probably going to need to be competitive in a tenure track position. I would think you'd probably need a K. Okay, next question. Is this a good time for applying to tenure track faculty roles focusing on global health? If so, what grant opportunities can you list on your statement that you would consider applying to outside of NIH? That I don't know because I do NIH. So, non-NIH questions are not really, I don't pretend to have the answers to that. Normally at NIH, you would be looking at the Fogarty Center. But again, I read that notice this morning about the foreign subawards, and it just made me really uncomfortable about the kind of language there, because I know from years past that anytime you're standing in front of a Senate subcommittee as an NIH staffer, they talk a lot about keeping NIH money in the US. They want to know how much it stimulates the local economy for each dollar, for each R1 that is spent. And I've participated in these hearings, both from the institute standpoint and from the office of the director standpoint, and just endless questions about that. And I can't imagine that's improved over time. I mean, I haven't done it in a while, but surely they're still asking these questions. And I would think in the current administration, it's worse than ever. And then reading that foreign subaward notice this morning just really made me, it kind of spooked me, to be honest, because it makes me wonder if, and with all this talk about the tariffs, it just makes me wonder if, we're building metaphorical walls around, which is silly because infectious disease doesn't respect boundaries, right? So, but it just seems like there's, I would, if there's any way not to invest your future in global health at this very moment in time, if you're an NIH applicant, it's probably a good idea. But surely there's other places. I mean, just off the top of my head, I would look at the Gates Foundation. They're very invested in global health, but I'm not an expert in that. And I would encourage you to go to your pre-award support office and see if they have a subscription to a database like Pivot, where you can look at some private foundation funding for global health. Oh, okay. The person was saying, I'm not sure the software exists. I was truly asking. Yeah, I doubt it exists. It's a moving target sorry, this is going back to I assume this is going back to that list of taboo words. So, Anyway, do you have any experience with filing appeals after the review process if you think that the reviewers were abreast of the chronic disease that is being studied? Yeah, I have an opinion on this, and I have experience with it, and I would say a resounding don't do it ever. So in my years, I've been in and around the NIH world since the late 1980s, and I have seen, like, when people file appeals in the review process, I've seen that be successful exactly never in my career. Exactly never. And I think all it ever does is piss off your SRO and potentially the program officer. So if you feel that the reviewers really weren't abreast of the chronic disease that was being studied, you either have to go to a different study section, retool it, and go in as an A0 to a different study section. Or if you felt that it was the correct study section, but the wrong reviewers, or maybe they didn't quite have the right expertise, then on resubmission to the same study section, I would ask the SRO for an ad hoc reviewer with expertise in XYZ, and really spell out carefully what that expertise has to be, not just in this disease, but this aspect of this disease, which is the piece that you feel that they missed. I never, ever recommend that somebody appeal a review. I've just never seen it be successful, and it just seems to wreak havoc. Can you share the ART web link, please? Sure. It is pretty simple. You can just, and actually, let me share the high risk, high reward page as well. So let me do that one first, since we were talking about that. Okay, hold on one sec. So this first one is the high risk, high reward. It ends in high risk. And then the second one that I'll share is literally if you just do a search on CSR ART, it will be the first thing that comes up. But I will link it for you. And the links are readily available in my course. So if you just go, a lot of the types of questions that are being asked about this stuff are in Chapter 1 of Master the R series. And that's the ART link, the one that ends in art home. And all of the URLs that I discuss in my course. So indirect, the way that organizations handle indirect costs can be wildly different. So like I can tell you my local state university, at least years ago, I think 7/10 of it went to the university and the central office at the university, and then 3/10 went to the division, and then like 1/3 of that 3/10, so 1/10 went to the dean, one to the department chair, and 1/10 to the PI, and the PI could spend it on whatever was appropriate according to their parameters. So, but it differs wildly from place to place. So that's something you have to discuss with your organization about. Do you as the PI get a piece of the indirect costs? And if so, what are you allowed to spend it on? And some of those publication costs, sometimes the department chair pays for that out of their cut of the indirects. So you should check that out too. Okay, last question, and hopefully my hotspot will hold up. Can your questioner go to Pivot to look for grant opportunities, right? Which is what I had already suggested that they do. Okay, that was like my hotspot is hot. So, all right, people. And even expanding to 45 minutes, we went over time, so we have to go to an hour. I'm happy to answer questions. So we have another session in 2 weeks. And again, that will be a Q&A. So that is going to be on May 28th, a Q&A. And then I believe the boot camp starts on June 10th. Tuesday, June 10th is the first week of boot camp. If people want to sign up for that, you just go to your course dashboard and look at the toolbar at the top, and it'll say my member benefits, I think is what it says, and there'll be a place there to sign up. So there may be another question in there. Oh, thank you. Somebody said thank you so much and enjoy your time with your grandchild. Thanks. My husband is weathering the baby front on his own and is very nervous about it. So so first Friday is June 6th and boot camp starts June 10th. Feel free to sign up. The sign up page is open. If you can't find it on your course dashboard, just go to our website. There's a if you just go to bouviergrant.com, there's a drop-down menu that has the bootcamp there. You can sign up there if you want. And if you can't find it, just email me, meg@bouviergrant.com. We'll get you signed up. So I hope everybody has a wonderful day and good luck with your grant writing. And as the French would say, courage. And I'll see you in 2 weeks. Take care. Bye-bye.